What's up, everybody? I'm Greg Miller alongside the future class of video games Blessing Adeoye Jr., and we're here to talk Godfall with the senior technical producer at Counterplay Games, Dick Heyne. Hello, Dick.
Hello! Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about everything that's upcoming for Godfall.
Well, I'm sure you are. If you don't know what's happening, ladies and gentlemen, we are making two videos. One video about where Godfall has been since launch, and then one video about what is coming next to Godfall. We are starting right now at the top of the order where Godfall has been. So, before even that, I guess, Dick, we're getting into a whole bunch of different announcements, a bunch of cool stuff you want to talk about in these videos. So let's start here. Maybe somebody has no idea what Godfall is. What is the elevator pitch?
Yeah, so with Godfall, we set out to be the premier next-gen looter slasher. We wanted to define what that subgenre is. What is it to be a visceral melee combat game that offers a quantity of loot? And then that loot all feeds into the player's build. And we wanted to establish something that kind of became the tinkerer's dream. You could really fine-tune and perfect your build through a series of, augment selection, weapon selection, etc.
Of course, Godfall initially launched November 12th, 2020, over on that there PlayStation 5 and Windows. But, in the middle of a pandemic, middle of a launch, a sea of other games. And let's talk about where it's been, because that was the thing is Godfall dropped. People said positive things about it. Blessing and I played it for a little bit, but we both fell off of it. And I assume when that happened, Dick, you guys stopped working on the game. You said, you know what, we're never touching this again. And you've been up to something else. So what happened?
Actually, quite the opposite.
You're like, wait a second, that's not what happened at all.
Wait a second, that's not what I wrote down. I think we did something different. Godfall was developed in the middle of a pandemic, which was just a unique experience for the team. No matter what your experience level was, it was unlike anything anyone had experienced, and it was a unique challenge. It was something we at Counterplay were excited to excited is the wrong word, but we were ready to tackle it. I mean, we were built as a studio that wanted to be able to access talent from across the world. So we were already building in somewhat of a remote sense, and the nature of the world kind of expedited that, and again created unique challenges. So where are we today? I mean, Godfall is a brand new IP, or at least it was. I don't know when do we stop calling it that? I guess how long does a new IP have to be added to
the future class of video games? I would think in the grandfathery way, right? You say like a year, right?
Okay.
Does that sound fair? I still think it is a new IP.
I mean, Godfall is still new to me, right? Like, it's still the first game. It's still the only game called Godfall. I think until you start thinking about next games in the franchise, I'd still call it a new IP.
Fair.
Okay. So we are still a new IP by our definition, at least. And what was exciting about developing a new IP is not only, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of foundational questions, stuff we were answering 5 years ago. What is visceral melee combat? What is Godfall combat? But now we reach a point where we ship last year, and now the conversation changes dramatically, because it's not our opinion of what Godfall is that matters anymore. It's obviously the community and the players. Our opinion almost becomes, I don't want to say irrelevant, that it really downplays the developer's role in it all.
It becomes moot.
It does become moot, and it becomes all about reacting to the community. So up until the point of launch, it had been all of us at Counterplay just putting our heads together alongside everyone at Gearbox and just trying to make, again, the premier looter slasher. So we launch, and we're met with a ton of community feedback, both good and bad. I mean, to be blunt with you. And so immediately our priority shifted from not working on something new, but delivering on what we believed was the compelling promise of Godfall. And it's like, how can we continue to build off of the foundation and push that messaging forward? And what we feel like we really nailed on launch was the combat. It was something that we spent over a year and a half essentially just developing that. I mean, there are of course there are other moving pieces. There's always a ton of moving pieces in game development, but when I reflect on the 4 or 5 years I spent working on this title before anyone even knew what it was, I remember so clearly for well over a year, every day we were just talking about player combat and how it relates to, the enemy moveset. And we had basic enemies, we had the player, and it's just like, how can we get this to feel unlike anything out there and create something completely new to justify saying, hey, we're a looter slasher? That's kind of like I suppose a bold claim to make in a space where nobody else really defines themselves as that. We can't do that if the slasher element isn't meaty, doesn't feel great. And we felt like upon launch, that was kind of the feedback we got from the community, right? Was combat felt really strong. It felt like it was really well fleshed out, strong foundation for us. So the question is, how can we build off that? How can we keep pushing it forward and develop further? And that was
Dick,
yeah,
please, I'll ask the questions. All right, hold on a second. This is a good jumping off because you're talking about player feedback, player impressions. Bless, when we were running into the launch of the PlayStation 5, Godfall is one of the ones you wanted to play real bad. You kept talking about it, I remember coming up. Talk to me about what you found with Godfall at launch.
Yeah, I remember talking about Godfall with you, actually, and talking about how I was actually pleasantly surprised with it. I had a lot of fun playing Godfall at launch, and I think that was mainly due to the combat. The idea of a looter slasher, as they were calling it, I thought was compelling because we have gotten plenty of games that were doing the looter shooter thing. We've gotten games like Borderlands. We've gotten similar sorts of games. And the idea of taking that and translating it into something that is way more melee focused and is not about unlocking new guns and new weapons of that type. It is about unlocking new swords or new pole arms or new axes, new battle hammers. I thought that was a very compelling idea. And in practice, I think that really worked. I think that is the best part of Godfall, going in and doing the combat and getting into that back and forth with enemies, especially when you have that balance of the heavy attack and the light attack and being able to build up the meter so you can get the final heavy attack on them so you can make them explode. I thought that was a very satisfying thing. And that alongside the visuals, alongside the style of it, I thought there was a lot there. But I think for me, the thing that I wanted to come back to more that I ended up lacking was probably more so the content, if anything. And I'm sure that's what we'll get into.
Sure. Well, that's one of the things I want to talk to you about is like, I remember your initial impressions, right? But then obviously there's a review cycle for PlayStation 5. We move on to other stuff. The holiday rush begins, yada, yada, yada. You are in this interesting place where you enjoyed Godfall when it launched for what it was, but then last week, getting ready for these videos, you went and played so much more of it. And so what are you finding now out of this? And then obviously, Dick, I want to talk about what he's finding and what you've added. But Blessing, coming back to it for the first time really since launch, what's different about Godfall?
Yeah, I mean, it's awesome playing it way after the fact, because I think at launch, when you're surrounded by a bunch of different launch games and you have all this chaos happening, it's easy to jump into Godfall, start playing it, and then easily get distracted by something else, right? I got distracted by Miles Morales, I got distracted by Astro's Playroom, and it made it difficult for me to come back. Whereas returning to it, I found that there was a lot there that I actually appreciated more, and I got hooked by the gameplay loop, which was a lot focused on the combat and doing the hunts and doing the different types of modes in the game. I think the thing that strikes me as different jumping into Godfall now is how the updates have helped improve the game so far. I remember running into quite a few bugs during launch. It seems like a lot of those have been smoothed over. You have a little bit more content there.
Too. Yeah, Dick, your friends over at Counterplay say all the bugs were your fault.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
As senior technical director, I am the sole person stomping bugs. So the fact that any existed at all should be completely reflective of me. And yeah,
wow.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, it seems like more weapons have been added to with the Primal update, and so you'll have a little bit more variety there. You have the Ascension levels, which let you get past the level cap, or at least allow you to build a character past the level cap and continue to get stronger and stronger, and more activities based around that. It seems like the game has started on this path toward having content built out a little bit more, and I look forward to seeing how the content continues to build from here.
Well, that's your impressions on it, Dick. I want to run through some of this stuff because if people haven't been paying attention, I think that was the word on Godfall at launch, was that fun core gameplay loop. People enjoyed it. It was pretty. That's what I got out of it when I played briefly. But then it was this idea for people who stuck around longer that, okay, it wears thin. There's not as much to do as we wanted to. And I think you're talking about responding to the players, right? Here in my notes, I have you guys have added in 7 different patches, bringing with them hundreds of bug fixes. I'm glad you finally got some sleep, Dick. Major quality of life improvements. Then, a free Primal update was brought to players in early 2021, bringing in new content improvements like the Tower of Trials 2.0, Primal items, Ascension levels, Vendor, Dreamstones 2.0, and then there's obviously the hunt for better loop and all these stuff that are happening in the end game and stuff like that. For you at launch, right, Dick, I assume that when this happens, y'all know that you're in this for the long haul and that this is a marathon and not a sprint, and that this is not one of the games that you launch and then, great, two patches and we're on our way. Yeah. Was this stuff you already knew you needed, you were already working on? Was it all player feedback? Like where do we start from building the next version of Godfall, or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, it's a really healthy mix. There's a great quote. believe by a director over at Naughty Dog. His name escapes me. I should have prepared it. But, you know, you've heard this sentiment before, which is essentially it's a miracle that any game ships ever to begin with. Because I feel as developers, we feel as though our job is never done. And if given the opportunity, we would probably iterate and develop forever. Eventually a game just has to ship. So to your point, it's really, as far as accumulating player feedback, planning for the future, and trying to have these things work in parallel and work in harmony. For us, it was a two-prong approach, and it kind of highlights, Blessing, what you're saying, which is we knew at launch there were two big buckets that the community want addressed. One was kind of like you're alluding to, quality of life, bug fixing, that like make it the most polished, refined game possible. And of course we have, like, that's our top priority. We have to do that. There's a lot of immediacy behind that. Then the other side is content. I mean, this is a looter slasher. Players expect that they're going to finish a campaign and they're going to be met with a ton of content to do, and they can chew on this and really sink their teeth into it with their friends and get hours and hours of gameplay out of this. And we need to meet that expectation. And we need to continue meeting that expectation well beyond launch as well. So as far as like what we were planning for these patches, as we were getting towards the end of the base game development cycle, we knew what our ship date was going to be. We knew what things were looking like. We had a pretty good idea of what our velocity was like, what was going to get in, what wasn't. We started to look at the list of things, and we're like, okay, we know what our feature list is for base game. We know everything that's going to be in this package. We feel really good about what we're going to be giving players as their first impression of Godfall and laying the foundation for, like I said earlier, this brand new IP. And then from there were probably a couple of features we knew that we absolutely were going to need either in future patches, content updates, what have you. Like we knew that those existed, but we also left plenty of space for ourselves to be reactive to community feedback. Literally just gaps where we're like, we're going to have a month of time for this strike team to work on a feature that is directly reflective of what the community wants. And at the end of the day, you know, what we think we need versus what the community wants, there has to be not necessarily some compromise, but again, some harmony between those two things. And that's where the challenges of game design start to come into play, and we really try to start thinking outside of the box to accommodate those two needs. And yeah, once we had a good sense of both internally what we wanted to do with Godfall and what the community was expecting, at that point it's just rolling up our sleeves and getting into it.
Okay, now speaking of player feedback, or while we're talking about player feedback, what's going on with matchmaking? I know they've had a bone to pick with you for a while, but you say you have news.
I do have news. Matchmaking is coming full throttle. We are really excited to be launching the beta version of our matchmaking alongside PS4, alongside Lightbringer update, alongside expansion 1. One, because expanding the audience out to the PlayStation 4 means a ton more gamers in Godfall, and being able to seamlessly matchmake with folks over on the PS5 is a big deal to us. And what we're really most excited about is originally matchmaking. It's an interesting feature because it wasn't slotted to be part of expansion or Lightbringer. It wasn't on the feature docket for us. But again, it was one of those things that we knew we needed to be very reactive to the community. And we're like, as soon as we can get it, wherever it lands, we just got to get it done. We got to prioritize this. And the matchmaking strike team who stood this thing up worked incredible to get this in time for the PS4 launch, which was really kind of like the gold version for us. We were kind of ready to, if it comes later, okay, fine, but it would be great if we got this, and we got it. Sure. We nailed it. And now we're just excited for, again, players to experience it and start giving us feedback. It also comes with an in-game ping system, which is brand new to Godfall, to allow players to better communicate when match made. So we're just excited to see what the community says.
And nod out of that. That got a big smile and nod out of
I'm all about that. I think every game should have a ping system, and I'm looking forward to that. That plus matchmaking is going to be big. That's going to be huge.
I wanted to present this to both of you, I guess, but I'll start with you, Dick. For you, we talk about quality of life improvements and how many ones you've added through these 7 patches and stuff like that. For you, what is the one that stands out? Like, what do you think the one is? And then Blessing as a player, somebody who played at launch and then came back just this past week, I want to know what stands out for you. We'll start with you, Dick. Quality of life improvements. What for you is the one?
So the one for me, I'm a big number guy. I love data. I love looking at spreadsheets. That's like the designer in me, I suppose. So I loved our improvements to the detailed player stat sheet because one of the promises that we made for players is this was going to be the tinkerer's dream, right? You could trade out augments, you could trade out pieces of equipment, and they would have both subtle and large impacts on how your build operated and how you played the game. And we felt like not enough of that data was exposed to the player on launch. So creating this in-depth stat sheet and just seeing all the numbers, I suppose it's subtle and maybe it's not something that necessarily every player out there cares about, but it was something that from the time that we started talking about it and like what data needs to be included in this, and then actually seeing it in the first build. I remember that very distinctly. It was an exciting moment. And I guess it's kind of like a like runner-up like meme answer is I was also glad that we were able to nerf Time Bubble. It felt good. It felt good when that went out. I slept easier that night than I had pretty much any night prior. So
I mean, you talk about getting nerdy with the stats, but that is so much what these games are, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm lucky enough to work on the Borderlands show, and so I've always had my very specific relationship with Borderlands, that I love the story and I love the guns and I love playing with somebody. But, you know, the grind for better weapons and stuff like that, that's not what I really play for. But, you know, meeting people like Mitsu and learning like the crazy things that the Borderlands fans and the Borderlands cast goes into of mid-max, this, that, the other, blah, blah, blah. Like,
oh yeah,
I have to imagine that's got to be one of the truly rewarding things about working on a games of service, a game that continues on, a game that has this long of a lifespan, is that you get to drill down and get into the weeds with people about certain things that you see them wanting.
Yeah, exactly. And it felt like we gave the players a lot of interesting tools, whether it be with Breach, Soul Shatter, all these different game mechanics, and making sure that they understood the implications of the changes they were making to their builds and how they can expect that to impact gameplay. That was really important to us. We felt like it was something we honestly kind of missed on the base game launch. And so as soon as that patch hit, it was night and day difference for us.
Bless for you, what stood out as a quality of life improvement?
Yeah, I think I'm also going to bounce off a little bit of what Dick was talking about there. I think for me, as I played through Godfall, a thing that stood out to me was the amount of loot I was collecting at every mission. You know, it had that really great feedback loop of making me feel like I was getting stronger and stronger as I was leveling up and getting better weapons, getting different types of weapons. And I felt like my playstyle was constantly changing as I went through. And I think that balance of making a game that one feels deep, feels like I can go in and tinker and mess with the numbers and have all these different stats and all these different options in terms of how I play, how I upgrade, what different items I take in, whether it is the banners or the weapons or whatever they may be. There are so many things to tinker, but I think on the opposite end, being able to have it be simplified and have it be a thing of, okay, cool, I want to hop into this mission real quick, let me go into my menu real quick and figure out what do I need to equip. And I think the game lays that out pretty neatly in a way where I can go in, see exactly what's legendary, see exactly what I want to dispose of, so I can trade it out for materials and sort it and figure out all that stuff on the fly and quickly, and not feel like I have to spend so many hours just trying to figure out what my build is. I think that balance has gotten refined over time, and I really enjoy that because it allows me to play the way I want, which is what I want out of a game.
Sounds like you did a good job there, Dick.
Thank you. And again, it was all me, so
exactly.
I appreciate you.
Sorry, counterplay. Get out of here. What are you talking about, other devs? This is a Dick show.
Nix that. No, my team's absolutely incredible, and they're all legends in my.
So that actually sets us up nicely, right, as we're on this precipice of ending this video about where Godfall has been in its journey so far and getting ready to talk about what comes next. Obviously, there's this continued, even if you're playing right now, hunt for better loot, the primal items, grinding out for the perfect build, right? But we are happy to confirm today that Lightbringer is the new endgame mode coming, right, Dick? Don't tell me the whole thing, but what is it? What? Give me a little bit of Lightbringer, 2-sentence description, because we're talking about it next time.
Survival mode.
Oh. Okay. And as I
put me on the spot there with just 2 words, I was like, oh, I had a whole paragraph.
No, that was good. That was really good. That's what
I just picked 2 random words. I'm glad those were the ones.
And so yeah, the important thing is that I'm seeing here to hit right is that this is coming to all players regardless of if they own the expansion, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We're really excited. Similar to the Primal update, which we've alluded to with Ascension levels, Primal gear. This was our last free content patch back in February of this year. Similarly, in parallel to us launching our first expansion, the Lightbringer update will come to players completely free. Base game players will be able to play the new Lightbringer mode, and we're really excited about that.
PlayStation 4 version of Godfall is launching, correct?
Hell yeah. With cross-gen play. PS4 players, PS5 play. Oh, yeah. And of course, you've got also the PS4 to PS5 upgrade on Godfall as well. So when you get your hands on a console, you got that going.
That's very nice, yeah. And I like that you guys are going the opposite direction. You see, most people will launch the PlayStation 4 game and then do the PS5 game. You guys are like, you know what? Our own drum over here. We'll do the PS5 game, then we'll make a PS4 version.
Oozing innovation, as you can tell clearly, yeah.
Fantastic, ladies and gentlemen. That has been the journey of Godfall so far, but as you can see, there are big things on the horizon. We will be back soon to talk all about the new expansion, all about everything Dick hasn't or has screwed up in the new stuff. Dick, you think about it, all right? Make sure you didn't mess anything else up, okay?
I'll go over a couple of checklists. I got you.
All right, good. And I'm excited to see what's up your sleeve. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time when we talk about what's still to come to Godfall, it's been our pleasure to serve you.